Gabby Petito's disappearance case had a tragic outcome since apparently her body was found in a remote area of the Bridger-Teton National Forest. Now all efforts are focused on finding her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, who was sharing a van trip with her across the United States before returning home in her van with her missing. Upon returning, he lawyered up and refused to talk or help in the search of what had happened to Gabby. Now he is missing too. In this video, I want to highlight the clues of narcissistic manipulation that Brian showed on a body cam video when they were pulled over by Utah police, including the police reports on the events. And for this, I'm taking into consideration the body language of both of them, what they said, and the words they used. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. When you see the body cam video, the first impression that you have is a woman that is really distressed and crying, and a man that is calm and collected and has these cuts in his face. Now, when you're going to analyze any situation, you must be sure that even if you have other pieces of information, you don't have biases about the case. And the first problem of this recording is that everyone saw it when Gabby had already disappeared and Brian was not cooperating to find her. A huge red flag about his involvement. And it's no wonder that a good chunk of the internet was trying to find guilt signals on him. There was also comparisons like this one, props to the Instagram account Without a Crystal Ball, that pointed the resemblance that Laundrie has to criminal Chris Watts. And we know that appearance has little or nothing to do with behavior. And these biases are understandable, are a normal human flaw, so you must be sure that you consciously put them away. But perception biases are critical to understand this case because sadly the police officers that stopped them fell into one of these biases. One of the police records says, "I observed some small scratches to Brian's right arm, and when I asked him about them, he supposed they must have happened when Gabrielle was trying to get his attention about me being behind them with my lights on." This, however, was not consistent with Gabrielle's statement, further suggesting her confused and emotional state. I repeat, suggesting her confused and emotional state. So you have a contradiction between the statements of two people and you assume that the emotional one is confused. Now, I acknowledge that the police officers were really polite when talking to both of them, but I'm not surprised that Gabby was perceived as confused and emotional because there's this assumption that women are emotional and make a drama of everything all the time, and Brian was perceived as this calm guy that spoke softly. But I had a real problem with my first impression of both, especially with Gabby's first words. She was blaming herself. She mentioned her OCD as she provoked the argument, that she was being mean, etc. Now let's make a mental exercise. If the situation was different, if Gabby was driving alone, it would make sense that she's trying to blame herself for whatever she did, okay? That's normal behavior in front of cops. On Brian's side, you notice that his attitude was almost happy, smiling, and trying to be cool. Again, if the situation was hypothetical, that Brian was driving by himself and got pulled over, it makes sense to try to be friendly with the cops. The problem is when you combine both behaviors at the same time. When a woman blames herself for the wrongdoing of her partner, in this case Brian driving into the curb, and she speaks in a distressed way and crying, that's let's say a red flag of emotional abuse. Why is that? Because if there was no emotional abuse, she could acknowledge that they were just having an argument and that led to the van getting into the curb. That's something that can happen, and most women would not be so emotional about that. A victim of abuse will be worried to do something that upsets or harms her manipulator, because that would mean some kind of psychological or even physical abuse later for her. They will blame themselves and do anything to draw the attention to themselves because they are terrified of what can happen later in private with their abuser. It also is reflected in her body language sitting inside the police car. Her shoulders are tense, her elbows are close to her body, her hands are between her legs, and she's trying to present her body as small as she can. She's genuinely terrified. At the same time, the emotional abuse scenario is consistent with Brian's playful attitude. If he were alone, that would be normal. But any real man that is riding with his woman will be worried about the police assuming that what happened was her responsibility. Laundrie explicitly said that Gabby grabbed the wheel while he was driving, resulting in the swerve. Any real man sees that his woman is crying, that the police officers are talking to her, maybe thinking that she's responsible. Real men will just say that it was their fault, that yes, we were having an argument and I got nervous when I noticed your lights and my hand slipped, anything. And the facial expression and attitude of a real man in that situation would be serious, neutral, no stupid smile. But if you are a narcissistic manipulator, you will be glad that the police tell you that you are the victim.
So at this point, you're the victim of domestic assault, and even if you're bad, so at this point, you're the victim of domestic assault, and even if you're bad, even if.
If a man is a real victim of a domestic assault, he won't be smiling or laughing. He will be serious and nodding. If a man wants to prevent any misunderstanding that could harm his woman, they will refute that statement. No, officer, that's not how it happened. But Brian heard that statement and he is delighted that someone of power told him that he was the victim. Narcissists love that. These are the kind of body language clues that you should pay attention to. That smile and almost laugh doesn't have a direct meaning in itself, but it's an outlier reaction that tells you what kind of person is Brian Laundrie. And what's more, there are witnesses that saw him locking her out of the van and she trying desperately to get in, hitting him, trying to get in through the driver's window. Now remember that it was Gabby's van. Imagine if we swapped the van for an apartment and someone locks you out of your own apartment. How would you feel? This must have been really frustrating and humiliating for her. And the fact that there are witnesses to this means that Brian did it in a public area, with an audience, with someone watching. And narcissists love to make fun of their victims in public because it's one of their sadistic games. It's one of the ways they can say later, "Do you remember that time when you went crazy at that parking lot in front of everyone?" To further humiliate and hijack your emotions. They will do anything to trigger you so you react in a way that they can use afterwards. And just the fact that he pushed her by the face, as seen by witnesses, supposedly to defend himself, is a gesture of power, control, and humiliation. Also, narcissists like to minimize your efforts or victories. In this case, it has to do on how important it was for her to create her vlog of van life. He calls it her little blog, even if he was part of it. She also says the words, "He doesn't really believe that I could do any of it," talking about Brian's attitude about her blog. It is also consistent with the fact that narcissists do not like the spotlight to be robbed from them. If it was Gabby's initiative to create a vlog about their trips, Brian might have become jealous about that, jealous of not being the protagonist. There are other contradictions and inconsistencies, like if he had a phone or not, or he deflecting the officer's questions about why he was speeding, or whether or not she grabbed the steering wheel. But what we've seen so far is more than enough to confirm that they had a toxic relationship, and he is a narcissistic manipulator. As in any toxic relationship, there's always a power imbalance where one of them systematically controls, minimizes, and abuses the other. The outcome of Gabby Petito's case is heartbreaking. At the same time, no one should live through the hell of emotional abuse for years and even decades. We can at least use these examples to identify these poisonous personalities before it's too late. By the way, if you want to refine your observation skills, don't forget to download my 100 body language tips in the description of this video. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell if you don't want to miss any of my body language analysis and tips. Take care, my body language buddies.